Okay. I'm going to pop off video.
Did I miss something important?
No.
No, I think we're going to get started here in just a moment. You're not able to see on the right side of the screen the Zoom group chat, right?
Oh,
On my screen, at least, that I'm sharing.
I see.
No, we just have the slides.
Perfect.
You're good.
Zoom is so smart. Okay, I will, Dr. Yanez, whenever you are ready to go, I will let you take the lead for the beginning, and then I'll give some etiquette rules.
You got it. All right, well, welcome to our first official 2020 Naturopathic Residency Panel. I am Dr. JoAnn Yanez. I'm the Executive Director for the Association of Accredited Naturopathic Medical Colleges. With us today, we have quite the panel of folks with a broad range of experience in various stages of the residency life cycle, from residents to residency site supervisors, from the colleges to a number of the sites themselves. And so today's panel is intended as an information session and a way to start conversations and thinking about residencies for the coming year and beyond. So Blake Langley is with us. Dr. Langley is going to give a quick introduction on a little bit of housekeeping rules and etiquette for today, and how to get in touch with us later on if you've run into any issues or have any additional questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yanez. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Langley. I'm a naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist, and I am also the project manager for the Stewardship Council. Been working with an amazing team to ensure that this is going to be a highly productive and informative session. Just for many of you, I'm sure that you've all been on Zoom calls, but just a reminder, unless you are a presenter or unless you have been called upon by one of the panelists, likely Audrey, Ladina, or myself, please make sure that you are muted to reduce the background noise and interference. If you have any questions, our contact information will be on the final slide, and all of the resources and information should have joined you in your email when you got the link to this meeting. And with that, I will hand it over to Ladina and Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey Shonnework. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and Ladina Jean is also the co-host with me today. We are the team leads for the Graduate Success Initiative Action Team. And we wanted to give a big shout out to Sharon Leary, who did a magnificent job of coordinating this, putting together the panelists. And of course, again, Blake, as he mentioned, he's the project manager and he's really kept this project on track. So we also wanted to share with you that tonight we have several great resources joining us. They are members of the teams that facilitate and organize residencies affiliated with the medical schools. This includes Dr. Jasmine Carino from CCNM, Dr. Gary Garcia from Bastyr, and Dr. Nicole Schiffler from SCNM. Also attending is Corey Murphy, and she is involved in NERC, as well as the executive director for PED ANP, Endo ANP, and ONC ANP. So she would be a great person to communicate with should you be interested in specialty residencies.
Hi there, everyone. This is Ladina Jean. I am just unmuting myself. Hopefully you can hear me. We're going to start with some introduction of our great panelists this evening. We're grateful for everyone who's joining us tonight. They all have a lot of experience to share. In no particular order, we have Dr. Kristen Bishop. She's a naturopathic physician who has been the residency director at Keystone Natural Family Medicine in Mesa, Arizona for 4 years, and is excited to welcome her 6th resident starting in October. She has also been the legislative chair excuse me, for the Arizona Naturopathic Medical Association for 9 years and knows firsthand the importance of a residency program and how it affects healthcare policy. Dr. Kelsey Klausmeyer is a naturopathic physician at the Institute of Complementary Medicine in Seattle, Washington. He has a primary care practice focused on the management of chronic illness, including overweight, obese patients, and is a site director for the I&M residency program, which offers 2-year naturopathic residencies. He earned his ND from Bastyr University in 2011. His work has been featured in the Seattle Times, and he has been awarded Top Doc 2016, 17, and again in 2020 by Seattle Met Magazine. He was recently elected to a 2nd term as president for the Washington Association of Naturopathic Physicians and is the chair of the Washington Initiative Task Force. Next, we have Dr. Tori Hudson, naturopathic physician and medical director of her clinic, A Woman's Time. She is currently an adjunct clinical professor at Naturopathic Medicine Schools, co-owner and director of product research and education for Vitanica, and the program director for the Institute of Women's Health and Integrative Medicine. She is also the founder and co-director of NERC, Naturopathic Education and Research Consortium. It's a nonprofit organization for accredited naturopathic residencies. And I'll turn it over to Audrey to introduce the rest of the panelists.
Thank you. Dr. Megan Culver-Cook is the president and residency director of Northwest Integrative Medicine, a group-based primary care clinic serving private and public insurance patients in the Portland metro area. This clinic was formed after her 2-year residency at Bastyr University and is now host to a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year residency. Her clinical focuses include chronic pain management, exhaustion, and fibromyalgia. Dr. Chad Estjen completed a 2-year naturopathic oncology residency with CTCA in 2007 and has been board certified since. He is the founder of Seattle Integrative Oncology and in 2014 created the region's first CNME accredited naturopathic oncology residency program with hospital and clinical operations in Seattle, Everett, and Olympia. He has also served on boards and committees of the ANP, ONC-ANP, ABNO, and presently serves as the chair of the Washington State Department of Health's Board of Naturopathy. And finally, Dr. Ginger Sweetan is completing her 1st year I&M residency in integrative urgent care, which she created this past year. She started her career as a U.S. Navy hospital corpsman, EMT, and nurse, after which time she took a career detour into business as a real estate and mortgage broker before attending Bastyr University in San Diego. She is passionate about advocating for naturopathic medicine and believes that quality residencies should be available for all who want them. At this time, we would like to invite Dr. JoAnn Yanez to share with you about our upcoming AA&MC event.
Thank you so much. So we have, I thought I was going to do this toward the end, but I can do it now. So AA&MC has an upcoming residency virtual fair, and we are going to, so this is just a save the date. You will be hearing more about this in the month to come, but it will be running from 10 to 2 Pacific time on November 14th. That's a Saturday, and so the idea behind this is to help students better understand what it takes to become a resident, what you have to do to be a successful applicant, and allow them a little bit of a chance to interact with some of the site directors to better get a sense of all of the different types of residencies that are available. And also, if they want to go about setting up their own residency, how to do so. So for more information on that, you can communicate with residency at aanmc.org, and all of the emails I believe will be up a little bit later.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, good. I'm unmuted. I couldn't tell. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. In preparation for the panel, we were actually able to review a lot of the questions that y'all submitted, and we've tried to incorporate some of those, and hopefully we'll be able to answer the questions that you've provided as time allows. And we're allotting for an extra 15 minutes at the end of the formal part of the Q&A so that we can entertain questions from the audience. So as we move through, make sure to make notes of your questions, and we'll ask you to send them over in the chat box. You can do that at any point, or you can save them and do that at the end. We also want to send a reminder here to please review the resources that we've provided, and know that we'll be offering some follow-up information at the end. We have collected up an extensive list of resources for those of you who are interested in starting a residency, as well as students who might be interested in starting their own residency. So we're going to try, and Audrey and I will alternate moving through questions. We'll try and keep them within certain time frames so that we're all respectful of everyone's time tonight. So first question of the night, just to get the ball rolling, and anyone feel free to pipe in whenever you're ready. What is the benefit of having a resident in your practice?
I can start with that because we're a fairly new residency program. Some of the things that we've seen is that that's been one of the best ways to really grow our practice. Residencies offer a salaried position for newer docs, which is a very secure position for them to build their practice within. We've really found that that security makes them want to stay with our company long term, so it's allowed us to expand and grow into new practice areas.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I'll take it. I like to say it's a win-win-win, meaning it's a win for the resident because they get to learn and grow in a team environment. I remember when I first started, I was alone, and I'd get in bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, I gave that person, you know, this vitamin, is it going to interact or something? So just that camaraderie of having a team and that security to back you. That would be the first win. The second win is sort of what Dr. Megan just alluded to. It's a big win for the clinic. And the third win, I think it's a huge win for the profession as a whole, because in order to advance our profession, I think we have to really focus more on our residency program.
I could chime in. I've been doing this for a long time. I was one of the very first residents in the profession myself, and then I had residents when I worked at the college. We had a small number of residents, and then with my own clinic, having residents there, and then starting the NERC organization. But so for the doctors clinics who want to consider a residency, you know, I think the potential, obvious things that people said, but for me specifically, I'm interested in residents who maybe also want to do some things that we don't already do at the clinic. So maybe things that I can still mentor, but maybe someone, you know, has a special interest in like weight loss, so which would work fabulous in a women's health clinic. So if I had someone that didn't want to work with Kelsey he might grab them first, but I'd be interested in that person at my clinic because I don't have as many skills as would ideally be needed, and that takes a lot of juice, a lot of energy for that kind of doctoring. And so that would be just one little example of looking for a resident that would expand the services that we have now. There is, for a busy clinic, there's obviously the opportunity for a resident to come in and help out with, you might say, overflow and patient and build the practice, add more patients, ability to help more patients. That is, a very different experience in different states and different clinics and different mature practices. I think, for many, it's basically a gamble to take a resident. You have a gamble with the personality, you have a gamble with their work ethic, you have a gamble with, economically. Is it something that that the funds can be, the cost of that, let's say $50,000 between salary and benefits and taxes, how many clinics can pony up and say, yeah, we have that $50,000. In Oregon, that's a very big gamble because you can't, it takes a year to get, the first year is toast for Blue Cross Blue Shield. The resident can't even be on that panel. I don't remember if that's the same or not. I think it's different. And if it is, then Washington doctors have a huge advantage for site expansion. We should really work that angle. And then for the best case scenario is 3 to 6 months it takes to get a doctor on a panel, a new doctor. And that's a big hardship and a big gamble for a clinic. But if that resident works out into a 2-year, a 3-year, let alone becoming an associate, then of course that gamble can really pay off. And then just for me personally, it helps me get my work done. It helps my longevity. I've been doing this for 36 years. And so, a resident the last 25 years really helps me, my sustainability for all the things that are needed to offer patient care and all the new things that I've had to learn that often it's much easier for a resident to learn and bring their EMR skills than it is for me, 68-year-old Tori Hudson dinosaur who wants to still do paper charting. So, the resident can really help the doctor with their patient load, their skill development, the clinic offerings, and potentially economically, but that can take a while.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that input. We want to shift slightly from what Dr. Hudson was just speaking to address another question that I think is very important for a lot of our people who are either students or wanting to immediately create a residency. How are residencies structured and where do we find that information?
This is for the potential residents. You want that information for them? How it's structured?
For both potential residents as well as sites.
Might be good for one of the residency directors to start out answering that. I mean, one of the, like Gary Garcia or someone like that.
That's the guy too. I think the good place to start is, when a student picks up a universal site application, the first section of that universal site application explains the different expectations, if you will, of becoming an approved residency site. And that also helps guide the site in terms of trying to understand what are some of the needs that are required to be an approved residency site. So that's a good start. And then from there, different programs out there will have their own site descriptions. If you have an account at the ANMC portal as a student, you'll be able to access the different job descriptions and site descriptions. I think that's also a very useful information that students over the past couple of years have found really helpful. And every year the site directors have also tried to provide as much detail. Some of them will even include some salary requirements or offerings and benefits. So those are some of the key resources that I think that are available. And of course, if there are any other questions, it's always good to, if you can, by logging into that account at the ANMC portal, you can then even reach out to individual clinics. So that's one piece. The other piece, of course, is like there are certain programs that are part of a group of consortium, if you will. An example would be Dr. Hudson's Naturopathic Educational Research Consortium, which is NERC. They have a certain structure to their program. Same thing with Dr. Klausmeier. He's part of the INM Residency Consortium. They have a different structure, if you will, in terms of expectations. So these are just some of the things that any potential either resident or a future resident affiliate residency director would be interested in. You can certainly access all that information.
And just on a note, we've included a lot of these links and information for registrants to be able to access. And so again, just make sure you're looking for the Google Drive link that Blake sent out, because a lot of this information is located there for you to be able to go back and review.
I found it really helpful to connect in with the school that I was placing my residency through. So reaching out to NUNM and having them kind of talk through the stages and timelines. Every time I've reached out, they've been really helpful. So I think if you're considering building a residency or trying to build a residency with a clinic, if you're a student, reach out to those residency directors at your schools, because they're going to have the resources that you're really looking for and have good guidelines and examples for you to work off of.
We've also just might mention, you know, there are situations, I think there's at least one person on the call where, you know, they had to sort of get up and go to, you might say, do all the steps to create a residency at a brand new site. And so talking to people like that, you know, from the sort of like the ground up, what did they do? What kind of conversation do you need to have with the person you've been preceptoring with? You know, what you know, what are some ways to, what kind of strategies, what kind of sensitivities, what kind of, when do you need to go actually have an administrator help you with the pitch, you know, and the proposal, or when you need to go to INM or NERC to have them help you with something. And then you have to then, of course, check with the school residency directors to find the sort of rules about that. It's not, it used to be, you know, more casual. And then now there's certain rules about how you, even though you're setting up the residency, there will be open applications to others. But yeah, talking to someone who's been through it, I think is also a good thing to have in the mix.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how much should we anticipate? Hold on, our timer went off here, cancel that. How much should we anticipate a one-year residency to cost for a private clinic? And what are the recommended starting salaries for a first-year resident? And we can sort of pick those apart. And at some point, I'd really like Chad, if you will, Dr. Esjen, to speak to your beautiful presentation through Onc A&P, breaking this down.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I don't know if you want to put that up on the screen just for a brief preview. I know it's in the materials that participants have received. But with the ONC-AMP, we've created a residency toolkit to be utilized primarily for anyone interested in developing a specialty naturopathic oncology residency. This is for future residency directors, but certainly would be useful for any student who's hoping to try to move forward with helping a site develop a residency from the ground up. The toolkit is probably very easily templatable to other specialty residencies and may even have some functionality for a broad general naturopathic residency. You can see that we broke it down into 5 different areas: the planning and preparations, the curriculum, the residency manual that's more administrative, the administrative timeline, and then funding. And we tried to color coordinate that to give you some idea around the wheel there. We initially presented this at the ONC-AMP in 2017 and updated it in 2018. Initially, what we thought needed to happen, or I thought needed to happen, is probably about 1.5 years to start planning ahead. Down in that bottom left corner, you'll see that 18 months prior to a residency actually starting. Most start in October. So thinking about that in April, 1.5 years ahead of time, and begin just putting some money away in the bank. Just, it's your residency salary, your residency costs. We started with just $1,000 and a little bit extra, and we started the residency in that October timeframe with about what we expected, or I expected, to be about half the cost of the residency. And that worked out pretty well by the numbers. These are a little bit older as far as the salary goes, and salary certainly goes up every year. And some of the schools have are setting a little bit more of an increased baseline for salaries that not necessarily every residency will follow, but that does optimally cause an increase in residencies across the board. So that's going to go up. I think these numbers, if we were to allocate that for today's estimates, it would probably be at least a $45,000 estimate, and probably going up to 55 or 60 for the total costs, including salary and all the costs associated for a first-year residency. You don't need me, and I don't think we have time to have me read through all of this, but there's quite a lot of details on this single poster, as well as in the ONC-AMP residency toolkit that Corey Murphy could help facilitate an interested individual into getting a hold of. It is available for members of the ONC-AMP, and I'm sure that those of us that have been involved in developing some of these materials could help others that may not be members but have strong interest in developing a residency, could help with some of those items along the way.
Thank you, Chad. That's really lovely. Does anyone else have insights or to offer about the cost? Because I assume that is quite different across a lot of the different styles of residencies we have set up.
I was just going to say that, you know, for our clinic, the Institute of Complementary Medicine, for that first year residency, we assume that it's going to cost the clinic about $55,000, and that's between the salary, professional memberships for state, national, for AANP. So I love that that was on the poster, Chad. I thought that was really great. And then to pay for malpractice and that type of thing. So yeah, I think those numbers seemed really accurate for at least what we're doing at our clinic.
I'm going to hop ahead actually and kind of insert a different question here because I think it's relevant to the conversation. How does that really change as you move forward if you choose to keep a resident for a second year?
So you start to gain some efficiencies in a second year. And what I mean by that is you start to have that individual bringing in funds. From a specialty residency perspective, I don't expect that my resident is seeing any patients on their own. So, you know, we're essentially paying for their time completely out of pocket. And come second year, you start to gain a little bit as that individual starts to see patients on their own and are essentially generating to the bottom line. The salary goes up, so those costs go up into a second year residency. And in the third year, which is ideally, you know, somebody sticks with the clinic, that's really where you start to see payback and the future for the resident as they're essentially a practice associate. So you really don't get to have, I think, payoff from a resident unless they stay in that clinic, at least in our model. For that third year as an associate, they start to really contribute to bringing more patients in and sort of seeing them on their own. But what's wonderful, our model showed that in our very first year, that our resident, when she finished her second year and then became an associate, she had a practice that was about 80% as full as my practice the year before I started the residency. So it was just this perfect segue, you know, from September 30th to October 1st, basically crossing that line from ending residency and becoming an associate. This person had a ready-made practice that we were working on in that second year to hand and funnel that individual, basically almost an entirely filled practice.
That's great. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the primary care setting, we get to start a lot earlier with our residents seeing patients. So they start after their training. They're getting mentored. We're doing check-ins through everything. And during those first 3 months, even though they're not insured by insurance companies, we are able to sign charts like you would in a teaching residency. And so that helps them start getting their clinic built. In Oregon, we're really lucky that Care Oregon and HealthShare, which is our OHP in Washington, I think it's called Apple Care, it's kind of the equivalent, actually pays us very well. And they have excellent contracts for primary care centered, patient-centered primary care homes that register with them. So we get assigned patients, and as soon as that provider is contracted with us, they are already getting assigned patients. So for us, our offset was a lot earlier in the residency process than with oncology. I could completely understand not sending someone off into a room with someone by themselves. But in primary care, especially acute care, simple visits, gynecology visits, there's very little supervision required. So our payback period was closer to 6 months in the first year of residence. And then in the second year, we're actually, you know, it's just as profitable as having another associate because their practice is about 75% full in that second year. Going into the third year, they are actually making us more money because they're not on a commission base, they're on a salary base, which actually works very well for our clinic.
And Kristen, I'd love Dr. Bishop to hear your insights because I've heard you mention before that residencies can be really profitable and not to be scared away.
Yeah, absolutely. I run a cash-based practice, so I don't take any insurance in Arizona. And I would agree with Megan, we do primary care. And so our residents are profitable for our clinic very early. Our CFO had originally told us to expect the resident to generate about $30,000 of profit for the clinic, and all of my residents have almost tripled that, at least doubled it. So I feel it's really profitable. That's why I say it's a win-win-win.
Overall, it sounds like having a resident is a really good idea, and I hope that all the attendees are really enjoying this knowledge base of such diverse types of practices that can really help you as you create whatever is the best fit for you in hosting a residency. So an interesting question to kind of follow up the conversation about cost and salary is, how did you generate the funding? So if the resident isn't paying for their salary by 3 months or second year, et cetera, what is getting you there, getting you to that point until they're paying for themselves, besides tucking away some money here and there?
Well, I can chime in. This is one of the important fundamental goals of NERC is to raise funds that we then distribute to NERC, the network of NERC clinics. And how that's done is got a lot of different moving parts to it, but we basically get sponsors, and then we designate sponsor money to different NERC clinics. We also get sponsors. All of our sponsors who contribute actual money also contribute discounts, from usually 15 up to 20% discounts for NERC clinics. So then that's another potential revenue stream for that clinic. And we have various efforts and initiatives that are required to maintain the sponsors that we already have, as well as bring on new sponsors. So for example, Chad is a NERC clinic, and he and I work together to figure out sponsors that would be especially interested in what he's doing at his clinic. That we really look for that model of, okay, what's going to benefit the sponsor, what's going to benefit NERC, and thus a particular clinic that then is going to benefit having the residents. I'm sure there's a much more efficient way to do it than what I do or what we do, but we've done decent with just sort of old-fashioned conversation, relationships, building rapport, making agreements, honoring those agreements. The companies need ROIs. They can't just continue to be generous. They can be generous if they are making money. And so we want to help them meet their goals. And we have various agreements that help us help them, and they then help us. It sounds a little bit not quite right, but we try to make it right.
I think another thing, oh, go ahead, Kelsey.
I just wanted to jump in and say that with our clinic being in the I&M consortium, that's the I&M sites get 20,000 for the first year resident. So that can be really helpful during that first year when they're, especially if you're kind of starting out and you're thinking, how am I going to make the numbers work? But there is, each of the sites that are involved then pay it forward in future years of donating back into the program or the consortium. In that cohort, they've tried to build in a scenario where the different residents going through are, having case presentations and things kind of done together so that there's a little bit more of a cohort model for the students to learn and kind of go through the process together, because it's a unique learning experience to be a resident. It's its own rite of passage to go through that piece of education. I'm going to share a quote that one of the site directors, Dr. Molly Niedermeyer, shares. Like at a lot of the meetings, she says that the students going through, that they're really getting, or the residents going through are really getting $100,000 education. And I don't agree with everything Molly says, but she says the resident going through is getting $100,000 education going through the process from the site director. So I've heard conversation, so far that yes, the site should make some money with the resident working, and for those on the call that are looking to go into a residency, I hope the impression isn't just, go do in residency because the clinic's going to make money on you. In fact, I think that the education that a resident gets in that period of time sometimes is equal to more than you would learn in several years out in practice if you were out hanging your own shingle saying, hey, come and see me, I'm out of school now. So I just want to put a plug in for that.
Yeah, one thing that I love Chad's brain and his intellect and organizational abilities, but one thing that's maybe not on there is just, all the time and work that people like Kelsey and Chad and Megan and others are putting in to teach and to supervise and to organize and to raise money and to yada yada yada. That's the other 50,000 of the 100,000 is going into that, all that postgraduate teaching that's going on. And it's not just teaching about clinical cases, it's teaching about how to run a clinic. It's teaching about, oh, wow, look at how Chad went and helped raise some money. Look at how Tori helped start an organization. And look at how these people behave. You know, he's president of the WANP. You know, those are immeasurable things to learn from a supervising doctor.
And that practice administrative thing really is an important part of a residency. So learning how to grow a practice, and that includes some marketing, that includes some outreach, that includes giving presentations. And honestly, that's one way to gain some of those dollars a little bit indirectly from a first-year resident, to go out into the community and provide a presentation to, in our case, it's oftentimes cancer support groups. Our resident will go and give a pretty, you know, easy to give for a new graduate nutrition talk, and that can help to generate more patients that help to bring in revenue pretty directly to their function in their early year.
Wonderful. So our final question for the panelists from our prepared list is, how can students collaborate with a clinic to host a residency site?
I'd love to jump in on this one because our residency was actually started by a student who had been a preceptor. We had planned on doing residency. That's part of our core mission statement at our clinic, is to develop more residency positions for naturopathic physicians. But you know, when you're first starting a private clinic, there's not a ton of money just floating around. You're constantly reinvesting in your practice and trying to make sure that your staffing is well formed. And we had been established with a preceptorship program in UNM, and that was such a profound way to start getting students in the door and seeing how they can be a benefit, what kind of practice specialties they have. That's really kind of our vetting process for most of our residents that we have now, is they've all been preceptors at our clinic. But Dr. Jameson approached us. She had been offered a residency that was already established, but felt like it wasn't quite the kind of practice that she wanted to go into. And she offered to work as an independent contractor for 6 months in order to build up a practice so that we would have enough of a patient base to offset that first-year residency for the first time we ever hosted one. So that was a really creative way of going about it. And it was definitely, she had gumption and she put in some work in advance, but she's going into her 3rd year of residency with our clinic and has a flourishing practice. So it just depends on what you really want. Long-term relationships for small clinics are a big selling point in terms of making that investment for someone who's not interested in a long-term relationship with a private clinic is a lot harder to pitch than it is to say, I'm really interested in being here long term. Also, she pivoted that she does digestive care and nutritional counseling, which we all know how important nutrition is, but I frankly do not like diet diaries or having to go through any of that. So that was a good pitch offset of, I will happily refer you all my diabetic patients that need to go through a diet diary and figure out their stuff. So find what that clinic really needs and speak to that need as an individual provider. How are you going to go in and help? As Tori was saying, what are you going to add? What's your value add to this? It's not always your experience. It does, we know that you're coming out pretty green from school. It's what are you going to grow into? That's what we're investing in as clinic directors.
Dr. Sweetan, I was wondering if you could speak to this a little bit further, since you recently or are currently in the throes of doing a residency that you created.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm actually at the clinic right now in one of our rooms. I was on an urgent care shift at Bastyr in my 4th year, and that is how I met the clinic director of the residency program that I initiated here at Healthtopia. And then I asked if I could come preceptor, and she moved off-site, just to give a little bit of history, because we were not generating enough business at Bastyr. So this woman had this vision of having an integrative urgent care, and she started her own clinic. And I asked if I could come and preceptor there. So I went and it was a startup and I said, can I stock shelves? What can I do? How can I learn from you? Can I sit in when you're doing patient care? Just to absorb as much as I possibly could, but then also to demonstrate that I was serious and that I wanted to be there and that I felt that I could add value to her practice. So I did that and then continued to work there for the rest of my 4th year. And then I just approached her and said, hey, can I start a preceptorship? Or can I start a residency? I've been doing this preceptoring. She said, yes, but money is an issue because they were a startup. And she said, I need you to try to find funds. And so I just started reaching out to people and hustling and asking, you know, where do you think I could get funds from? I reached out to Gary. I talked to another student at Bastyr who had started his own residency, found out that I&M existed. Also, I had had a conversation with Maggie Beeson, who works with Tori Hudson, and said, what does this look like for me to get the funds needed to make this residency work? And I was able to get the $20,000 through I&M, and then my host site is responsible for the rest of the money. But I feel like that it's been an interesting year because where perhaps I could have initially worked to bring in funds for the clinic, COVID happened and we shut down for a period of time. Well, we opened back up and now we're actually profiting as a result of COVID. So I would just say that we never know what is going to happen, how it's going to happen, but we have to empower ourselves through action. And it's my sentiment that if we want to continue the trajectory of our education and we want to have residencies for our future naturopathic doctors, then we have to make opportunities for ourselves. And that means being not afraid, or perhaps being afraid and pushing through that fear anyway, having conversations, reaching out to site directors, going to different locations and preceptoring, ensuring that where you go is where you want to be, that you'll be happy there, that it's a good match, and then, you know, getting creative about how to find funds if financing is an issue.
Thank you, Dr. Sweetan. That was really awesome. I hope everyone feels super fired up about starting their own residency. That's the hope. We're hoping to gain more residencies within our profession. We want to make sure we leave some time for questions from the audience. And so we'll open it up now for folks to send over your questions. You can use the chat box function to send questions over. We'll take about 15 minutes and move through those. And it looks like we already have one that popped up here.
Adina, can I have to add this. If you guys are only looking at Seattle and Portland and Phoenix, you're really missing out. There are rural docs who are offering salaried positions who cannot find people to work there. I see one of them on this call who's trying to get people to come out to their clinic just because they're an hour outside of those metro areas. So those are other clinics that you can really leverage because they're looking for people. They're already offering salaried positions. Turn that into a residency. Again, in Oregon, residency allows you to contract as a primary care doctor. That's a really good leverage point. It also allows you to talk to other provider types like medical doctors. They really value that residency, that if you have residency experience, that means something to them. So look right outside the schools is my grand suggestion for you all.
Awesome, thank you. So one of the questions we just received was, can a NERC supported residency be hosted by an integrative clinic run by an MD? And I'm wondering if maybe one of the administrators should speak to this question.
Theoretically, yes, but we have, Corey can correct me on this. We denied one of those applications to become a NERC site from a residence, an integrative MD, maybe a year and a half ago. They were part of a big hospital system, a big practice system. They have a lot of resources that, that we felt like we wanted to more honor the ND clinics. But I would say it's certainly a goal. I'm a big fan of integrative medicine my whole career, and have done many things to promote that amongst our profession. But with limited resources, we weren't quite ready to say, okay, here's money for this clinic, when our other 12 ND clinics were needing more money as well. Corey, am I right about that?
Oh, is she on the call?
No, she's not there.
Might not be on the call anymore. I think she had to leave a bit early. I'm wondering, Dr. Garcia, if you could speak to that just from a CNME perspective, if, establishing a residency through an integrative MD clinic is something that makes sense, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and it's certainly doable, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Schiffler and Dr. Carino can also speak to this. And the key here is really to make sure that there is at least some naturopathic presence in the form of a naturopathic advisor as much as possible, so that it maintains a naturopathic philosophy, because that's really key. Because if you're just solely working with an MD all the time, without even any exposure to naturopathic medicine, then it's no longer a naturopathic residency. It's almost an allopathic residency. So the CNME guidelines state that there should be some level of exposure and interaction with other naturopathic physicians. In a perfect world, that would be in the form of a naturopathic advisor. Nicole, Jasmine, do you agree?
Yeah, I can speak to this. I oversee a site, and I have also in the past where the clinic is predominantly run by MDs, and the initial resident kind of split her time. In the prior CNME guidelines, there was kind of like a 40% naturopathic primary care requirement, which that's now changed to what Gary is referencing as a naturopathic mentorship. So prior, that resident was spending some time at a naturopathic clinic and then spending 60% of their time at their main office. And that resident's continued on. She's now been there for 3 years, so she now will be the site director for an incoming resident.
Awesome.
The audience keeps sending us questions to ask these great panelists. While we're waiting for more questions, I'm curious if any of the panelists have any kind of additional advice of what to do or what not to do.
Kidding me?
Well, one thing that hasn't been mentioned that I like to often mention to the soon-to-be graduates is in trying to, if you're scouring to find to help develop a new site, a place that's not already a residency site, already shared some really great things. But another thing to maybe think about is, scour the landscape that you're wanting to go to for what naturopaths are running their own clinics, especially if it's just them solo, who's at least 60 years old. And because they're going to be, most of them are going to be wanting to retire in the near future. And so that could be an advantage in trying to set up a new site.
I would say if you're thinking about starting a residency as a practicing doctor, I'd say do it sooner than later. I probably waited 2 or 3 years longer than I needed to. Dive right in, get going on it. You'll do better, I think, than you could imagine. And I couldn't agree more with some of the sentiment for those new graduates. If you're looking at a residency, go where you want to be longer term. You're just going to have a ready-made built practice for that moment that you finish residency, to be jumping right off into a well-established or ready to be established career. So finding that right place to land when you start your residency would be an optimal situation.
Jumping on to what Dr. Ashton was saying, I think I counsel students who are anywhere from thinking about becoming an ND student to a current ND student, and they're always asking about residencies. And to just go on what you were saying, start networking early, go to conferences, start making acquaintances with doctors, request to intern or shadow with them over the holidays, over summers, start to see the types of clinics that will be a good fit for you to learn and grow in.
And precept with them. I mean, having a student who's precepted at a residency site, that puts you, it helps you understand what kind of decision you're about to make or go into, and it gives the decision-making doctor
The types of culture and environment, because
Dr. Yanez has been having some technical issues throughout the entire call, so we might just have her going in and out, by the way.
It's like, who do you want to date and who do you want to have a relationship with, and then making yourself date worthy. That's how, like, it comes down to that.
And so that includes practice focus in terms of what types of patients you want your clinical focus to be on, but also business model type is a really important thing to consider in terms of, if you're not interested in doing insurance, do not go and have a residency at an insurance clinic, because business practices are incredibly different between those types of business models. And I think at least with private practice residencies, the business administration education you're getting is a big chunk of what you're getting, is that practice management component. How do you build a sustainable practice that will be profitable to you in the long run as the clinician?
A kind of follow-up question to that is, one person was mentioning, because of COVID, the preceptorships are very difficult to find right now. So do you have any other advice as far as reaching out and connecting in a way that would kind of expose their clinical abilities for potentially a residency?
Marketing skills are another big thing for us, at least, focusing on how to build and market yourself. What's your brand? What's your edge? You don't have to have all that figured out right when you're coming in, but look at the company's website and really see, what are they missing? What are the areas that are you a good writer? Are you good at public speaking? And leverage that, write a letter, reach out. You can always say, can we have lunch? Most doctors will make that, at least that amount of time with you if you're really showing up to the conversation. Once you have your foot in the door, that's the starting place. You're going to know if that's something that you can keep moving on or not.
So I'm not sure, is my audio okay? Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. There are so many unknowns. Insights brought out this past summer. Oops, I'm not sure if my audio.
You may try turning off your video just to decrease your bandwidth and just use the audio.
Is that better?
Yeah. Better.
Okay. Anyway, in regards to COVID, there's so many unknowns regarding COVID right now. I don't know that we could definitively forecast how residencies in 2021 cycle are going to be looking. We did have a significant drop this past summer in residency sites, but we are doing all we can right now to foster growing residencies and growing the pool for those. Everybody is all hands on deck working to do that right now.
I think this is an important time to remind everyone to attend the virtual residency fair in November as well for more information. Great place to connect there.
Yeah, and we're seeing some more questions come through, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's been very generous of folks to volunteer to be here, and we just hit 5 o'clock. So I want to just remind everyone that we have resources built in place for you so that you can get answers to any remaining questions that you have after tonight. It looks like Blake's going to show you where to find them. So these are links to all of the different associations that can guide you and have materials posted on their websites. ONC-A&P is a great resource for if you're thinking about creating a specialty residency. There's a lot of information there. Corey Murphy is a great person to be in contact in regard to that. And then we have a lot of other information available through CNME, NERC, AANMC, and INM. So don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. I think Blake put his contact information here. I think you have residency contact information for AANMC. Just as a place to start, whether you're a student or you're a clinician thinking about starting a residency site, let us hold your hand, guide you in the right direction. And certainly if you have a lot more questions, please make sure to attend the virtual residency fair coming up in November. And thanks so much to the panelists, the residency directors, event organizers, and everyone for providing so many resources. We hope this has been enough basic information in how to create a residency. And remember to watch out for all the follow-up information, and best wishes. Thanks for attending, and stay safe out there.
Thank you all so much. If you do have any questions, please direct them to my email or residency@aanmc.org. We're going to hope and try in the next week to develop a follow-up FAQ. And we will be posting it to the Google Drive and emailing it out to participants. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Blake.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.